Interrompemos esse podcast para perguntar: quem você quer ser?
Designer, engenheira, pedagoga,
administrador.
Quer saber? O Senac EAD é nota máxima no MEC. Tem cursos de diversas áreas, com conteúdo elaborado por especialistas do mercado e professores mestres e doutores. Ainda tem o Senac Carreiras, conectando estudantes a vagas de emprego em todo o país. Saiba mais em ead.senac.br/graduação.
Pausa rapidinho agora para falar de dica de ouro para os papais e mamães. Depois de experimentar a nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha, tudo ficou ainda melhor pro meu filho. É a única com canais em X que se adaptam aos movimentos, com 2 vezes proteção noturna e cintura elástica que se adapta ao corpinho do bebê, além de ser super fácil de colocar e tirar. Praticidade pura. Então guarda essa dica. Nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha. Bebê, estamos juntos nessa, mais do que nunca. Agora curta seu podcast.
Doctor, look!
Stand aside, nurse. I'm Dr. Homebrew.
Stand clear.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Dr. Homebrew. We're back with another episode and some more homebrew because you know what? That's what we do. It's in the name of the show. That's what we do. And we're here from it, or we're here for it, rather. And with me, as always, Brian Cooper and Brian Shar, two both national BJCP judges. They've actually
certified.
Yeah,
certified apprentice.
I just got an email from Gordon Strong. You've both been demoted for not bringing sexy back and quick enough. So
I'm working on certified level 2. I want you to know, and I'm going for my Cicerone server. No.
Yeah, I think you should, man. Very good. I'm trying to unlearn everything I've learned. So that's a whole thing. I got to unwind time.
Start back with the basics.
Yeah, exactly.
What is beer? What is this beer thing we're talking about today?
Well, it's a solid, and it's typically dried. It's powder, and then and then we go from there. Okay. Anyway, before we get to today's guest, I want to thank our show sponsor, 5 Star Chemicals. You can go to 5starchemicals.com. Do it right now. You can do it at any time. And I think that's part of this Web 3.0 I hear so much about. You don't have to, there's not a certain time that you go to the website. You can go to the website at like 3 in the morning if you want. It doesn't matter. It's open basically 24 hours a day. And what you can do there is learn about cleaning and sanitizing ingredients that they have over at 5 Star Chemicals. They produce over there. They blend, they manufacture, they do all sorts of fun stuff. Make these chemicals so you can have clean and sanitary home brewing equipment at your house to make your, cider and your beer and your wine and all of that kind of fun stuff. While you're over there, be sure to sign up for 5 Star's free Homebrew Club program in one of the links in today's show description of the podcast or on YouTube to receive free product, exclusive discounts, monthly educational seminars, and free swag. Yeah. All right. Welcome to the show, Andy.
What's going on, guys? Thanks
What's
for having
up, dude? Yeah, thanks for joining us. So I don't have any of your beer, and I want to know why. I demand an answer. Cooper, what happened? You got drunk in one night, and
I'll blame Justin, I guess. We
nice.
could just do that, right?
Okay.
Throw him under the bus.
Absolutely.
Blame whoever's not here on the show right now.
Correct.
Right. So we had recorded our June shows, and I was the only one of us going to HomebrewCon, and Andy was messaging with me. He said he did have a beer and he was going to bring something, and I thought, maybe we can do something with it and record there. And I, talked to Justin, and he was like, yeah, sure, we can do something. He's going to have a little small setup, and we're going to maybe try to hook up at club night and do this. Andy brought us beers. We found each other. We were ready to go. But then it's club night, and we're all running around, me in my blue wig with my goggles and my lab coat, being me, and
which I'm sure was really not warm at all.
It tastes like some booths just had ciders, and some just had meads, and they're just like,
God, that sounds great,
amazing. It was so much fun. People were licking each other. It was hedonistic, the germs were flying everywhere. Now I'm just trying to scare JP. Sorry, there was not very much licking going on.
Well, now I don't feel like I missed out.
I kind of threw up in my mouth a little bit thinking about a bunch of homebrewers licking each other.
No, it was good to be back. It was really good to be back. I just decided, not to worry about the whole thing too much. I'm boosted, whatever. If
Sure.
I get sick, I get sick. And a number of people did get sick coming back.
Yeah. Well, that's how we should handle the pandemic. It's just not worry
know.
about it anymore. Fuck it. Yeah.
But yeah, I did 3 days of judging, and after that, I was ready to cut loose a little bit. So club night was kind of a nice release, and that was a lot of fun connecting with Andy again, and just kind of, tasting beers around with people, and
cool.
It was good to be there.
All right. So we only have 2 bottles. Cooper, you got 1. Shar, you got 1. I will be drinking my new favorite drink, bitters and soda. This is an Earl Grey flavor. It's from a company called Green Bar Distillery. Just going to give a quick shout out. If you can't really see it. They're great. I don't know, man. I like Earl Grey tea, and it tastes like Earl Grey, and I love it. And then, of course, I'll be chasing with a Modelo. That's what I'm going to be doing, in case anybody really gives a shit. But Andy, what are the boys drinking from you? It's a pale ale, right?
It is a pale ale. That's
nice.
Right.
All right. I like how I asked you and then answered my question for you. So that's just what happened right there. Is this something you've made before? I'm imagining everybody's made at least a pale ale a couple times.
Yeah, so I have, and it was actually a strategic decision not to give any more than 2 bottles, so you couldn't have any.
Damn.
Because last time, so you might not remember, last time I was on the show, you just talked smack about my pale ale, and how it wasn't really a pale ale, so I didn't want you to have any.
Oh, okay. Well, look,
that's cold.
I don't remember that because it's not the only one that's ever been lied to about that before. But you know what? I don't blame you at all. And hopefully I will be the one feeling left out. It depends on the scores. If you get anything under a 35, then I won't feel bad.
Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair.
All right, cool. Mr. Shar, why don't you start us off here?
Well, I certainly will.
All right.
So, Andy, thank you for sending this beer. I appreciate that. And I have to ask, because I ask everyone, are you in a homebrew club?
Yeah, I'm in the Clarksville Carboys, Clarksville, Tennessee. And a little plug, New South Brew Off is our big yearly competition, and entries open up here in a couple weeks. So for anyone out there listening, go ahead and send your entries in.
There you go. Absolutely.
Very cool. Is there a website or someplace I would find out about the New South Brew Off?
Yeah, I don't have that written down.
Okay.
That elevator.
Brian just sounded
Google it, you'll find it.
Just Google New South Brew Off, and you'll be able to get it. Cool.
Brian sounded like the automatic voice on TikTok that reads your text. Is there a web page I can find out about the New South Brew Off?
Oh, man, yeah, that's such an annoying TikTok voice. I hate that voice so much. And it's so annoying.
It's yours, man.
And thank you that make me think that I sound like that.
You're welcome.
I got to reevaluate my life choices here.
Yeah.
What is this TikTok thing you guys?
We all do, man. It's Chinese spyware. It's fine.
You're ticking and talking. It's the kids like it, and like my wife watches TikTok a lot, and it's just people like the TikTok.
You don't stop. All right.
Exactly.
Let's do it.
All right. American Pale Ale. The bottle was appropriate. I checked. It was a bottle. It was appropriately sized, capped, fill level, label removed. Aroma. Initial impression I got was medium hop aroma, low malt aroma, kind of like a 2-row. And what's interesting, and I've let this sit out for probably a couple hours since I judged this, and it's not super warm in my house or anything. I don't. My perception of the flavor has changed a little bit, but not the aroma. No diacetyl, no off aromas. The hop aroma has sort of a spicy and tropical character. It's very pleasant. Gave it 8 out of 12. Appearance 3 out of 3. It's gold in color. It's crystal clear. Medium size head with very long head retention. Flavor. Initially, malt makes the first impression, along with a low hop flavor that seems kind of tropical and juicy, if I could use that characteristic of juicy. What's interesting as it warms up is I get more like a hint of almost like a Vienna, as well as a 2-row. So it's a little more complex malt character as it warms. Bitterness comes up to balance in the mid palate. It's well attenuated. The finish is long and balanced between malt and bitterness. And one of the things, I'm going to take just a second here to sip this again. There was an initial flavor at the very beginning that I thought it's just part of the malt, but I came back to it earlier, and I'm coming back to it again now, and I'm getting this also again. like an earthy hop flavor component that it's almost can be mistaken for malt. And they blend together really well. And there was something when I had first judged this that I'm like, there's something more here than just malt. I wonder what's going on. And to me, I think it is like an earthy hop and perhaps a little bit of additional malt complexity. I'll be curious how wrong I am later on. Flavor is, I give it 13. Mouthfeel, medium body, medium carbonation, no warming, no astringency, more perky than creamy, 5 out of 5. Overall impression, 7, for a total of 36, which is very good. This is a really flavorful and well-made beer. I like it a lot. The only thing I might change, there's no technical flaws that I could find. The only thing I could think of to change is maybe switching up the flavor hops so they stand out a little bit more from the malt and are showcased a little bit more. But by and large, hey, 36 is very good, and it's an excellent beer. And I think I thank you for sharing with us.
There you go. All right, Cooper.
Okay. Yeah. I'll echo a fair amount of what Brian said there. Opening the bottle, the fill was right, had a nice hiss. I judged it on the colder side because I had to kind of rush home and judge it. And again, this was not at all Andy's fault for having to send it just 2 bottles. And normally we get 2 of each beer. He's like, I'll mail you a bunch of beers. Like, well, we'll just make do with this and judge it for what it is.
It'll be all right. We can go back to the old days.
In my suitcase coming back from Pittsburgh.
Hey, ironically, it probably traveled better than most of the beers we get from the East Coast. So
possibly,
it's fine.
Yeah. Well, I won't tell you what we did with it in our hotel room, but yeah. Aroma-wise, has a citrusy hop aroma up front with a light earthy tone beneath that. Just some slight caramel and a light bready malt quality, even though it's a very, very light in color. I kind of felt like I got a little malt complexity, like Brian's saying. Esters are pretty low and in check. There's no DMS or diacetyl. Is actually pretty clean. But I'd say just the beer is just a bit muted overall, but otherwise it's clean. There's something that earthy hop is kind of poking out a little heavy there, and that was kind of interesting. But some citrus too. So I would be curious about the aroma hops that were used. Gold colored beer with just a slight hop haze. It's actually fairly clear. You could give it full points for appearance, and a little hop haze is definitely forgivable. There's just a tiny bit of it here. Mostly finer bubbles, stuck around fairly well in the head. Nice and tight on the top there. Fine bubbles, good. Flavor wise, it comes in with a slightly kind of rough edged, like a little bit of a bitterness that hits first, and then the hop flavor is a little bit underneath that, and it's earthy again and kind of vaguely citrusy. Still, the beer is balanced to the hops as a pale ale should be. Seems cleanly fermented, a good ale like character. Finishes semi-dry. It's kind of in the territory it should be. It dries off when you get the hops. But it's a lightly bitter aftertaste. The bitterness kind of clings on. And it's low malt, again, with kind of a bready and a light, maybe caramel or maybe a little toast. I'm wondering if I'm getting any oxidation in this or not. I know the bottle, well, we got it in June from him. And how long before that it was bottled? Maybe a week before that. So it's been in the bottle for a little while, but if you're careful, that should be okay. Mouthfeel wise, medium light bodied with I'm getting maybe a slight astringency in there. I shouldn't say maybe. I just felt like I got a little astringency probably from the hops. There's no creaminess. It's medium carbonation as hoped. That's nice to the style. No warmth. You wouldn't really want a big warmth in here. So, mouthfeel wise is fairly in the territory there. Just the astringency is like pulling it back a little bit. Overall, it's a good interpretation of American Pale Ale. I'm just trying to decide what I do to abuse it. Was it? No, I do admit we got it back. Like I dragged the bag back from club night. No, actually, I did not even. I went back the next day, and that the club that we had left it at, a couple beers left there in the bag. I was like, oh yeah, I need to grab that. And So it was warm for a while, and it was warm on the trip home. Obviously, I put it in my fridge as soon as I could, but
you do what you can, man. Yeah,
it did what I could.
You're really making people excited to send beers to Dr. Homebrew.
Yes, we will abuse your beer with the. Yeah.
Can you tell Cooper's a salesman by trade?
So I'm wondering if it's just if it's could be that the beer itself is a little bit aged and slightly long in the tooth, or else if there's a touch of oxidation creeping in either from the bottling or in the original beer that's kind of dulling things, because it has that impression of a beer that's just, it's like not like cardboard or paper, but it's just something's coming in and slightly dulling it. And I can tell that probably those hop flavors that are there were a little fresher and brighter when it was first brewed and poured from the keg. Or I didn't look if it was bottle conditioned, but probably not. It's probably from a keg, I'm guessing. So yeah, I would just say advice would be, up the fresh late hop additions, use slightly different hops to kind of brighten it up and get more citrusy, or Brian got a little tropical, he said. I wasn't really getting that, but it'd be interesting to know what the hop is. And
I think I was reaching a little bit, Coop. And I was wondering if there was maybe just a hint of oxidation. It was not cardboard or paper or honey. And I wondered maybe at the front end if I was getting maybe a little bit of oxidation, and that may still be ultimately what I was getting.
That might be what we're both picking up, is kind of earthiness. It's like, it's not too far distanced, I guess. It's like the dullness, the earthy, like a nice bright citrusy hop can turn. If you let a beer sit overnight on a counter and put it in your fridge and try to drink it the next day, it's just all that fresh hop stuff is just gone. You can't really drink it anymore. It's not going to be the same at all. And even just a little bit of oxygen in the beer, despite our best efforts to bottle and do it cleanly and do clean transfers, it's, as a home brewer, without the purging the lines, so it's everything they do in a commercial brewery to get everything removed of any oxygen. And when we make hazies, you have to be even more careful, especially. But just that oxygen can come in and really dull things. So there's a lot of tricks you can do to remove oxygen from your from your setup there. You can some people run liquid through the lines they're going to transfer from, and just run that clean, like distilled water out first, and then get the beer going, and or do keg to keg transfer and just make sure just purging everything really carefully. You're using a fermenter that you can transfer from with light pressure. Some of those new fermenters are awesome for that. But yeah, I think otherwise, balance wise, maybe dial back the bitterness just a bit. It seems like a good recipe. It's just something's getting in the way here a little bit, and it's probably my fault. I just abused it, and it bounced around in my suitcase and the car from the airport, and I got it in the fridge here. But it's, I really appreciate that you brought me the 2 bottles there, Eddie. We finally tasted them and judged them, and it's maybe not in the most ideal condition, but I landed at a 34 on it. It's a very good American Pale Ale. It's not, wow, not, knock your socks off, amazing at this point, but I imagine from the keg, it probably tastes different when it was the freshest, when it first at its proper like serving time, like, okay, this beer's ready, let's go. So, I do thank you for sending it, and it was nice to hang out with you there at the conference and have some homebrew conviviality and fun.
Conviviality.
And yeah.
What did you score it?
Sisterhood, whatever you want to call it. Yeah, just like it was good to be back.
Good. What did you score, Brian?
34.
34. Good. All right.
So we averaged to a 35, I guess, which is meets your standard.
Yep, that's right on the cusp of me caring. I don't know.
I'll save you a little bit.
Sounds good.
If you want to try it later.
Please do, actually. No, if it was refrigerated all the way, I would say yes. But it sounds like you beat the thing to hell, so that's fine. Andy, do me a favor. Tell me a little bit about this beer. Let's go through the recipe. Do our normal shtick.
Those 2 bottles are probably the most abused beers in history because
sounds like it.
To get those there, I was in the process of moving, so I sent entries off to NHC, and then I had some left over, and those were 2 of them, and I was moving, so those things got driven all over the East Coast. I flew up to family in New Jersey. They came with me there in my suitcase, and then flown to Pittsburgh and went there, and every intention of drinking them there, but like Brian said, club night, got a little crazy. And then actually it's my fault they got left there because I had to deal with a family emergency. So I kind of ghosted Brian at the end of club night and just kind of took off.
Good.
And
serves him right.
Basically wrote the beers off. Yeah, I wrote the beers off, and I was like, hey, just give them to whoever's at the booth or whatever. But I'm glad they made it to you guys. So it was cool to hear the comments. So those are the most abused bottles in history, at least and my brewing history, I think.
Yeah. Well traveled, though. I mean, they've been to 4 different states. And,
for sure.
I mean, lots of suitcases, lots of hot weather. So I'm glad they stood up.
Classic.
I mean, it sounds like they weren't terrible. So I think that's a win for me.
Yeah,
it's drinkable. Yeah, you can finish this.
So this is actually back in 2019. I did Dr. Homebrew with basically the same beer. With just some very slight tweaks. And that one won NHC that year. And that's when you talk shit on it, JP, just to remind you.
Thanks.
But it's basically the same recipe. It's a 7.5 gallon batch, and I used 10.5 pounds of 2-row, which is 73%, 3 pounds of pale wheat, which is 20%, 8 ounces of Crystal 40, which is 4%, and then 7 ounces of acidulated malt to get the chemistry right. That ended up being 3%. For the hops, a quarter ounce of Warrior at 60 minutes, and then 1 ounce each of Citra and Mosaic at 5 minutes. And then I did a Whirlpool at 180 for 15 minutes, and into that was 1 ounce of Citra Cryo, 1 ounce of Mosaic Cryo, 1 ounce of Idaho 7, and then 1 ounce of Vic Secret. Fermented it with San Diego super yeast with the yeast starter, 68 degrees.
It's a good yeast.
I mashed at 149. I love San Diego super yeast. That's a good one. Fermented at 68 degrees, and then a couple days in, I threw in 2 ounces of Mosaic, and then once the fermentation was done, I did 2 ounces of Citra and 2 ounces of Idaho 7 for a couple days.
Now you're just taunting me with all these awesome hops. You make me want to taste the fresh beer like this.
Even
God
fresh,
ass,
it wasn't. It was cool to see the differences, because I've brewed this several times. It was cool to see the differences in the hops. They were all, new hops, so they weren't sitting around or anything, but they were definitely different than what the original beer was. I got a lot more originally. I haven't tasted it in a while because, I don't have any more, but it was a lot more dank than my first one when I had it. And I think maybe that's probably what turned into the earthy hops, maybe what you guys were tasting.
No, there is a dankness. There is a dankness here. I get that now. Yeah, for sure.
And then once it started to fade, I think I drank my last one a couple weeks ago, but the bitterness stuck around and the aroma, and that flavor kind of died off a little bit. So a little bit out of balance to me. But I also brew this to enter into IPA category as well. So it's kind of right in the middle. And when it's fresh, it might be a little more IPA-ish. And so one of the things that I didn't know if you guys were going to pick up on was I overcarbed it to begin with. I did what I normally do, and for some reason that didn't work out this time. I was kind of in a rush, so I bumped up the keg to like 45 psi for a day, and it was just too much. And then I spent the next 5 days before I had to bottle it trying to correct that. And to me, it kind of was too much, and I think it caused it to taste a little more bitter than it should have because of that. But
we've all
sounds
been
like
there.
It mellowed out, so that's good.
It's easy to add carbonation. It's really hard to take it away.
Yeah, I was like Googling stuff, and I was, I always do the same thing, and that's never happened. And then, it's a week till NHC entries are due, and of course, I was doing it last minute.
It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I know what you're saying too about that. I call it like a pale ale and a half. It's like bordering on IPA hops wise, but kind of high end of pale ale strength wise. no matter what JP says, I really like that kind of a beer with a fresh, modern hop character, good tropical.
I do too.
Little dank, a little balance to it.
Just, be responsible with the ABV. That's all.
Soft bitterness. You can push it up to, 5.5, 6. It's still a pale ale, but it's
this one was just over 6%, so 6.3. So it's
too much.
0.1 out of style, JP.
Yeah, that's too much. No, the best for a pale ale, it needs to be 5.8 or lower. 5.9,
I agree with you.
6.
When I go
that's
buy
too much.
them, that's what I want. But
Yeah.
I found in competitions, especially if you're later in the flight, do much better if it's a little bit higher.
Push it up a little bit.
I will agree, but I think the problem is people like Brian Cooper who think that everything should be between 6 and 8%, even when you're judging. And so therefore
there's style creep. Style creep is happening, but also, it's a weird thing. Like drinking small samples of a beer is different than quaffing a whole pint of the thing. And to be a good judge, you have to be careful to kind of avoid that bias of, this is a little bit bigger. I like this better,
Right.
Is it a good pale ale? Go back to basics, Does it work as an American pale ale, or is it just a little too alcoholic where it should almost be an IPA? But again, some of the modern pale ales you get, the bitterness is lower, the alcohol is a little stronger, the hops are brighter like an IPA. You taste this next to what a classic American pale ale was fresh in the 1990s. It's a completely different animal now. You can't even get that kind of beer because it doesn't sell now as much. You might find one, but it's just,
and I think part of the problem is, when you push a pale ale up to, kissing the IPA range, or you let an IPA fall, to kissing the pale ale range, you get that blend. You're like, I drink this. I don't know if it's one or the other. If I go to the beer board and I go, give me a pale ale, and it drinks like an IPA, I'm going to be unhappy. So I don't know. Like I think, brewers, homebrewers as well, have always pushed the boundaries and seeing what they can get away with. But sometimes those those beers land in the high end of the category, and it makes the other category too fuzzy. And then it just sort of like muddies the waters for me personally. But, I have control issues.
Right. And IPAs push toward double IPA category. It's not rare to get, 7% IPAs now. And it's like, well, back in the day, that wasn't really going to fly. That would have been called a double back then. And, I don't know. It's interesting how things have changed. And it's not my fault, JP.
No, I know. Of course not.
I have nothing to do with it.
Yeah.
And it's also not the case that a Belgian pale ale should be 4.5%. That's just your opinion.
That's me. Yeah. Absolutely. Look, everything I say is just my opinion. Nothing should change. It's just what I enjoy.
Or Belgian blonde ale, I meant to say. But anyway, sorry. Yeah.
What do we think about the recipe? We think it's good.
I like the recipe. Like, again, it is proof to the point. You just have to smell your hops and know what you have when you're using them. You might make a hop substitution at the last minute where you could be running to the homebrew store for a dry hop that's going to accent what you put in the boil because you couldn't change that out, or just, smell it before you even get to brew day and know what you have, know what you're using. And the pros do that. I mean, they like, this batch of such is garlicky this time or whatever. It's an agricultural product. It changes over time. Every crop is different. And, some of the new hops, I've had some IPAs that have tasted like peanut buttery in an odd way. And it's like, you get this, I don't know if some of the New Zealand hops, but I also had one that said it was Citra and something else, Simcoe, that had a little peanut buttery character to it. And it's just like this odd character that just stuck out. And it's like, well, I'm glad I tasted a little sample of this before I put it back. It's like, did the brewery just do a peanut butter beer before this and not clean the lines out well? I was like, no, it's just like something weird in the hop doing that. And we were at a Doe's meeting the other night. The guy from Ghost Town was talking about that too a little bit. He's had hops come through like that too. Hop, it's and malt, everything in beer, it's agricultural products. And the yeast shouldn't vary too much, but you can control your water. You have yeast. You can get the number of cells right. The yeast pitch, the strain that you use should be good if you get it from a reputable source. But the malt and the hops, they're always going to change over the years. And, you're trusting that maltster, you're trusting that hop producer to put forth a product that's going to represent what it is Mosaic, it's like, but I've been to breweries where like they had something they got on the secondary market it was Galaxy. And it was just, it smelled horrible. Like, and when you get fresh Australian Galaxy, it's like, oh my God, that's such a wonderful thing. How could someone, anyway, but yeah. There's so much variation in freshness of the product and how it's delivered, what the crop did that year, everything. So, how did the beer do, Andy, that you entered it in nationals or? Yeah,
I think it went to there was 3 rounds. I'm trying to remember, but I think there was 3 rounds. It got to the second one, I think. And then in IPA, I think it was similar. Made it, a round or 2 and then got booted.
It was tough competition there for sure.
Oh yeah. That's I mean, NHC is always kind of like have to have really good beer, and then I think there's a little bit of luck involved too.
Yeah, it's really good luck.
The way they're doing it now with the way they're judging now, I think it's even harder.
Yeah, it's all 1 round, so you're basically prelimming in place. But honestly, I didn't have some tables I heard had rougher luck, but than others. But for the most part, even the first rounds, the quality of the beers was pretty decent because the quality of homebrewing these days compared to 10, 15, 20 years ago. It's advanced and people know, okay, I'm not going to enter NHC and win with this beer. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah. And when I had this, I already paid for the entries and everything, but I knew it wasn't as good as what, won back in 2019, but, at that point committed, gotta try.
You paid the $73. You're going to send something, right? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Andy, do you have any questions for these guys? Make Brian Shaw work a little bit here for a second.
I kind of got the feedback about the hops, and I know that it was kind of faded a little bit just because of time, but and I got kind of the same, impression of like I put all these what should have been some tropical, and I know a little, the Idaho 7's kind of dank too, but then it came out a little more earthy than I wanted it to. So that might have just been, I guess, the hops I was using. But no, I appreciate you having me on. And in all seriousness, sorry, JP. If I had any left, I would have sent it.
It's all good, dude. Don't worry about it.
Just send us another fresh beer sometime. We love having you on the show. And we'll see you at HomebrewCon next year, hopefully in San Diego. If you can make it there. Yeah. It's a longer trip for you, but thanks for coming on again. And it's been fun hanging out.
Yep, absolutely. I appreciate it. And thanks for hauling those beers back, even though there's only 2 of them.
Cool. All right, Andy. Thanks, man.
Okay.
We'll let you split.
Thanks, Andy.
See ya.
All right, everybody else, hang on just a sec. It's Dr. Homebrew. We'll be right back.
Pausa rapidinho agora para falar de dica de ouro para os papais e mamães. Depois de experimentar a nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha, tudo ficou ainda melhor para o meu filho. É a única com canais em X que se adaptam aos movimentos, com 2 vezes proteção noturna e cintura elástica que se adapta ao corpinho do bebê, além de ser super fácil de colocar e tirar. Praticidade pura. Então guarda essa dica. Nova Hug Supreme Care Fralda Roupinha. Bebê, estamos juntos nessa, mais do que nunca. Agora curta seu podcast.
I'm sorry to tell you this, but we're going to have to pour you out.
Back to Dr. Homebrew.
All right, thanks for sticking around, everybody. We are back with another commercial calibration ale. I do like these segments. I feel like we've gotten away from them a little bit because it is hard to find, a lot of even semi-nationally distributed examples of the style guidelines. So it's a tough one. But Brian Cooper, you came through today. This is 805 from Firestone-Walker, everybody's favorite blonde ale.
Well, here we are in the heat of the summer. If you're in the Northwest right now, baking in 110-degree weather, or in the South, baking in 110-degree weather with 110% humidity also, you're going to want a beer like this because, A, it's really refreshing, B, it's really clean, and C, it's a crowd pleaser, but it's also not Budweiser. So, some people that like Budweiser, fine, okay, whatever, but I would rather have one of these. I would rather have something that has some flavor and lasts and doesn't turn into,
a I agree.
whatever at the end, like warm Budweiser at the end.
Yeah, I agree. So, what category is this in?
So in the BJCP guidelines, they didn't change the style number. 18A has been blonde ale, since the 2015 guidelines came out, but they updated them for 2021, and now some of the other commercial examples honestly have been hard to find. I mean, other than Kona Big Wave, but how often do you find the Russian River Oud Blonde or the Victory Summer Love? And I mean, maybe if you're in that part of the country, Widmer Citrus Summer Blonde, Pelican Rwanda Cream Ale. Those are examples of the style. I mean, 805 is just like it's easy to get, at least here on the West Coast. I'm not sure how in other parts of the country it may be, but it's ubiquitous out here, like for summer parties, summer, get-togethers.
Oh yeah.
You're gonna sip an 805 and enjoy the 95-degree weather with a lot less humidity out here, but it's the right beer for the time of year. So that's definitely part of knowing what to drink when, and in the winter, sure, go sip a barley wine or a big brown ale or something, or a winter warmer. In the spring, have a Meritzen or something. I was like, whatever, but Maibach, but in the summer, you're going to tend towards these lighter beers, and there's a reason they're here. There's a reason that the style works, and it's easy drinking, approachable, and refreshing. So, kind of key to the style. And it's malt oriented. Not everybody likes hops. Not everybody likes pale ales, IPAs. Hey, when this comes out, it's like, okay, there's some hop to it, but it's not the forefront of the beer.
Right.
And you can get some interesting hop character to drive it different directions. It's also a style that has pretty wide variety for room for interpretation of the style. You can add almost any hop to a blonde ale, and it's not in the forefront. It's kind of there to balance the malt and give you a little something, and keep it refreshing, keep it light, but have a little okay, this is a craft beer. This is not a pale, watery, fizzy yellow beer.
Exactly. All right. Well, Cooper, why don't you start with the calibration, man? Let's go through the style guideline, run this beer through it, and see if it matches up,
okay.
and if so, how.
So appearance wise, they can go from light yellow to deep gold. This one's approaching pretty deep gold, and actually, it's got a little more depth of color and even I think maybe a little more body than some of them have.
Yeah. Jordan in the chat says you got to find this beer fresh, and I definitely agree with that.
Should always be clear.
For sure.
Yeah,
I watched out for the bottle date, and these were bottled on 6/6. They're a little over a month and a half old.
This is one of those. Yeah, this is one of those beers that I think it's okay to sift through the back of the of the shelf to get the fresher date, because there are going to be people who don't care. They're going to buy it anyway.
You don't do that for every beer you buy?
No, I don't. I do it for Sierra Nevada.
Yeah, so I got in the cold part of the grocery store. I bought cold beer. Yeah, I got the stuff that was out of the light. I went one back, but then I went further back, and there was nothing fresher than 6/6. So I just went for this.
See?
And yeah,
my man laughing because he knows. Yeah, it's definitely okay to do that for this. I agree. Yeah. I mean, I agree. So, I said it. So
in the aroma, it's gonna have a little white head, reasonably good retention. Should be brilliant though. You want it to be clear. It's always got to be clear. This is not something that you can forgive a bunch of hop haze in. It's not a hoppy beer. It's going to be clear. Some of them might be filtered, but it's going to look nice in the glass, and just shine with a bright kind of gold or yellow highlight to it in the summer light. Aroma wise, it's mostly malt, nice little sweet malt, little breadiness, a little caramel. Sometimes that's optional. It's an ale, so you can have a little esteriness to it. It can be a little bit fruity, but that's not really the focus. You get the hop again can vary a lot. You can have almost no hop to a moderate hop aroma in there with the malt, and any variety is fair game. It's not like they're going to twist these towards, oh well, we need to use this fancy tropical new hop in here. You can get by with a pretty basic classic hop, anything citrusy, floral, fruity, anything just bright or even a little spicy sometimes. You're going to use something that's going to just play with that malt that's there and accent it a little bit, but not overpower it. And the flavor, a lot of the same things. It's malty, bready, little biscuit sometimes, a little toast, a little wheat. It's not like an American Pale Ale. It's not going to, be super, well, you can have a little toast, but it's not going to be super caramelly, for example, or, too toasty rich. It just needs to be an easy, smooth drinker, mostly base malt accented with some light kind of specialty malts. If you want to keep it towards blonde, so you can't get too crazy with those, or it's going to turn into an amber ale. But this is it's on the darker side, but it's not bordering on an amber ale flavor profile either. So
yeah,
the hops shouldn't be super aggressive, the malt shouldn't be super aggressive, but they should be kind of in balance, and neither one of them super aggressive, but just working with each other, playing off each other a little bit, and get a nice balance where this is drinkable. The bitterness should be pretty much out of the way, kind of medium low-ish. Keep the balance kind of towards the malt or even. It's going to finish towards the dry side, but not bone dry. You want to have a little bit of sweetness to play off the malt in a beer like this. And it's, sometimes it's just the bitterness is out of the way, so the sweetness can actually shine through with the malts that you have there. Whereas if you have a pale ale, sometimes the bitterness can cover up that sweetness that is there, but you're just not tasting it the same way. And it's just, similar dryness, kind of semi-dry to, pale ales can go drier, but I guess I find myself comparing it to a pale ale because that's the hoppier version of a style. And, typically when you would used to go to the classic brew pub, you would go in the 90s, everybody always had a blonde ale. Everybody always had a pale ale.
Yes.
Sometimes they'd have an IPA. Usually they'd have a porter, and they'd usually have a stout.
Yeah.
If they had 5 beers, that's what they'd have.
Blonde ale was ubiquitous. It was everywhere.
The blonde ale was what people would come in and say, "Oh, well, do you have Budweiser or do you have Coors?" And they said, "No, but we have this is our blonde ale. Do you want to try this?" And most people, it's such an approachable beer and good summery, and a light lager is a good summer drinking beer too. If you want to go towards that lighter end, and the, some of the mass marketed beers, they're well made, they're carefully crafted to taste exactly the same every time, and they're served very cold. They're very highly carbonated. This is a little less, it can have medium to high carbonation, but it's a little bolder and a little more flavorful. But someone that likes that kind of a beer can still drink it and enjoy it. It's never heavy. It's just a nice, smooth drinker for this kind of weather here in July in California.
Yeah.
So that's what you'd go in and ask for. Do you have a light lager? Well, this is an ale, but it has lighter flavors. I will say I keep getting more malt out of these. I mean, what are you tasting, Brian? Tell me what. Yeah, there's a little toastiness to this. I think that's kind of nice.
I was wondering if there was some Vienna malt or something in here from a malt standpoint, because we were talking about the color. I think this even goes past gold into almost like a really light amber or something like that. I mean, that's reasonable minds can argue about that, and it's also really hard to. Without a standardized glass to figure out what color something is. But to me, that's consistent with having maybe a few percent of something like a Vienna.
You know what it is?
A hint of a pale chocolate. We don't know. Yeah.
Honey malt. Taste it again.
Recipe.
It's honey malt.
Okay. That's just your intuition?
I don't think so.
I can't remember. I know it used to be in there at least, and I want to say that Matt took it out, but I don't think that is true. I think it's still in there, but it used to be honey malt, and for me it tastes like honey malt. So I'm going to say I'm 95% sure that there's honey malt in there. I don't think it's a Vienna, because I remember when we were talking about this. Yeah,
honey malt tends to come across to me it tends to stale really quick. So it tends to get cardboardy, and it tends to have a prominent honey flavor, but not in a good way. And maybe just if they use a tiny hint of it, as Firestone-Walker.
Yeah.
So they do things the right way, and they're probably, shipping cold, trying to keep it cold all the way, minimizing oxidation. It's possible.
Well, yeah. I mean, it used to have it. I know that for a fact, but like I said, I want to say that maybe they took it out. But I don't know.
On their website now, I have the inside scoop. These are the ingredients. They use hops, malts, yeast, and water.
Oh, okay, malts. So we're wrong.
Not just one malt.
Yeah, right. Malts. Multiple malts. Just one big kernel of malt.
I can't fault them for that. But also, they don't market this as a blonde ale. It's just 805. It's a California,
Yeah, which I think they did.
Refreshing ale.
Which they did on. I know they changed that marketing, which I think was smart, because like we were saying, in the late 90s, early 2000s, you're getting blonde ale, and people started to turn on that term, and I think that's smart.
Yeah, they state specifically in a lot of places too that the beer likes to be put down cold. So that's definitely a part of the style. You don't want to let it warm up too much as you're drinking it, or it's going to change on you a little bit. It's going to be a little bolder. It plays well cold. There's not a lot of bitterness here. There's no bite. It's smooth. It's fairly malty, this one. Other blonde ales will be a little lighter on the malt and have a little more hop to them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not getting a ton of hop. I think there's a little spicy quality, a little floral quality to the hop, but it's not citrusy. It's not tropical. It's not dank or resiny. It's just it's the light kind of noble hop quality that you get in European beers.
Yeah, it's there to support the malt. It's not there to be the showcase.
Exactly. So, these days to stick around, you can't just market things the same way we did in the 90s and the early aughts. It's craft beer has changed a lot, and they're doing a smart job of marketing this beer, but it's actually also just a really good, clean beer that's easy drinking, very approachable for a lot of people, and good for the season. So, I bet they sell a lot of this in the summer.
Oh, this is all the expansion you see at Firestone is because of this beer. And at one point they were, I don't know if they're doing it anymore, but they were going to have just one brewery just to make 805.
Well, they've started also making an 805 Cerveza, which I find interesting. Maybe we should have done side by side.
I didn't like it. It has like that hint of lime, and I think that ruined it for me. I didn't like it. I had it once, it's not very good.
And that's a 4.5. The 805, the regular 805 is a 4.7%. We even market that Cerveza as like pretty low calorie. It's 110 calories. I imagine this was probably 120-ish or something. It's not heavy. It's not too big. But the 805 original, it's meant to be drank cold and enjoyed as we're enjoying it on a fairly warm summer evening here, but in the daytime it's a party.
It's a warm summer beer. What? Okay, so we left off at what? Malt, the flavors.
No, I was into mouthfeel.
Mouthfeel. Okay, all right.
You're welcome to take over, Brian.
And Brian, what do you taste?
I'm fine.
I taste. I've been thinking about this honey malt thing. I'm gonna take a sip here again.
Do it, baby.
Didn't want to have just some dead air without an explanation. I don't get a lot of hop flavor. There's low hop bitterness. It's definitely there.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. It's not Vienna. I was thinking it was maybe, I was getting maybe a toastier character earlier, but the more I drink of it, I'm not. And maybe it is just like a varietal of honey malt that isn't is at a level that's just right to give you a little bit of flavor without being too much.
Yeah, I think it's a kiss of honey malt, and I think that's where you're getting that, because I used to put honey malt in my yogurt when I worked at More Beer and just go grab a handful and throw it in. It was very good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But and at a low level, it's enough. It's one of those malts that you do not need a whole lot of. And
how homebrewers, like we judge homebrew a lot of the time, and you know how homebrewers like to just go, I'm going to use this ingredient, so I'm going to use a lot of it, so I really taste it. So you have people putting in, 2 pounds of Special B in a 5-gallon batch of beer, or I'm going to put in 2 gallons of honey malt. So homebrewers can go a little overboard, and that's cool. But Firestone-Walker's not gonna do that. Yeah, I don't really get any hop flavor.
No,
this is not going to be. I mean, what are the guidelines? They call this like a perhaps similar to a maltier example of Kolsch. More flavor than American lager and pre-male. So,
what do you think about that hoppier version of a Kolsch? What do you think about that?
I think I don't believe that. I don't know, Cooper. What do you think?
Well, blonde ale in general, it's meant to compete with the light lagers, and usually made at breweries where they either don't have the jacketed conicals with the glycol system to power a lager in the summer, or the patience or time to make a lager. And they're making, and this is again kind of talking old days. They make a light ale, maybe at a slightly lower temperature ferment, so it's not super fruity. It could be a little Kolsch-like, but it would have to be lighter than this one is to play in that way.
Yeah.
This one plays like a malty light, almost more like a lager version an ale version of like a light, maybe a lighter, slightly lighter, Dos Equis amber or something like that. Like you're trying to make a slightly amberish Mexican lager into an ale, for example, and this is what we got. I don't know. I don't know what they were going for with the recipe. I'd love to talk to him about that someday. But some of them even use adjuncts. They'll use sugar or rice or corn, lighten up the body and get it really light, as most American light lagers are made. But as things go along, maybe they're, blonde ale is not something you find at a lot of breweries anymore. It used to be back in the day, you'd find them all over the place. And now, although, of course, Kona Big Wave Golden Ale, that's a popular beer. You go to the islands, you're going to have some of those. Or here, there, you get that nice blonde ale that's, you feel like,
they're here and there, but they're not. It's not what it was.
Right.
And it's interesting in the flavor, looking at the guidelines, it talks about light to moderate hop flavor, any variety, but shouldn't be overly aggressive. Medium low to medium bitterness, but the balance is normally toward the malt or even between malt and hops. So maybe there's just some hop flavor, and this is just still too cold for me to get that. But the fact that this is coming across to me as maltier than hoppier, than bitter, is a feature of the style. And I think that having some additional malt complexity, one of the things I didn't like about blonde ales that you get in a brew pub, and aside from the fact a lot of places just kind of crapped them out and didn't take a lot of care with them because it wasn't what they were, as brewers, excited about making.
Well, and that there wasn't a lot to hide behind compared to the stouts and porters or IPAs and such.
That's exactly right. But I think part of the reason why those beers were just uninteresting and kind of died out was they were just very one-dimensional. There wasn't a lot to them. They were like a ale version of an American lager, and they're just it wasn't that tasty. This beer has, if it's the honey malt or whatever other malts, maybe a hint of caramel malt might be in here. I don't know, probably not. But
now you're just doubting yourself with everything.
Well, now I'm starting to wonder what I'm thinking. But there's enough malt complexity in here to carry this beer.
Yeah, well, I think that's what makes it so unique and so popular.
Yeah,
it's because it's not just a boring ass blonde ale. It has some power to it.
Yeah, I mean, most people these days, they've tasted IPAs, they've tasted a porter or a stout here or there, and that might not be their style, but you can handle something with a little more malt in it. Whereas if this came out in 1970 and you all of a sudden were putting that, here you go, try this, it's a blonde ale, they'd be like, whoa, that's malty, that's heavy, but it's not, none of the above. It's light, it's approachable, it's drinkable, and now people are more cultured. Craft beer is a known thing. People that don't know about it have lived under a rock for 30 years.
That's right. All right. So, what do we think? Have we run through the whole descriptor.
Yeah. I mean, to make this a classic blonde ale, you'd want to lighten it up a little bit. Like Brian said, it's a little towards the deep gold side, and it's not just to golden. And you could up the hop a little bit. But again, I don't think they're marketing this, nor did they probably ever intend to be in the style guidelines as an American blonde ale, as an example of it. But it's an eminently clean, smoothly drinkable beer that's approachable for what it is. It leans towards the richer end for the style, malt wise and color wise, and that's fine. The balance is right. It's nice and dry. They're using some kind of specialty malt in there that we can't identify just by taste alone. But that gives it, I think, a little toastiness, and I wouldn't say it's honey-like, but it might be honey malt.
Well, here's the thing: if this was on your judging table, would you say that it's not a blonde ale because of that sort of honey? There's that Vienna / honey malt flavoring. Would that throw you? When you go, wait a minute, what's going on? Would you mark it down for that?
When I'm judging a blonde ale, I allow for a lot of variation. So it's, as you taste a lot of, a number of them, not as many anymore, but, as you taste blonde ales, you realize some of them are going to get darker. Sometimes the brewery just has to boil things a little harder in the way their brewery works. The beers just get a little darker, but they're just using base malt and maybe a little tiny bit of specialty something, and then they'll push different hops up in it. I would say, this one, you could get away with adding a little more hop. Would it make it better if the hop was working with the malt that's there? Yes, but this one plays a little more towards the malty side, and that's the way the balance lies. And it's eminently drinkable. It's enjoyable when it's nice and cold as it is now. I'm going to finish this pint. It's a good solid beer.
Don't dodge my question. Shar, you answer the question then.
I'm going to answer the question.
Yeah, thanks.
Because the guidelines say at the very beginning, some styles are very rigid in what you're allowed to have, and some styles are not. And this falls to me in that category. The flavor description begins initial soft maltiness, but can also have light character malt flavor, e.g. bread, toast, biscuit, wheat. Caramel flavors usually absent. If present, they're typically low color caramel or honey notes. So that's, caramel or honey are okay. And what this is signaling is there's a lot of different flavors that can go into this. And there are other characteristics that are more important. I think for me, if this is the lead commercial example, and I have no doubt that it should be, the guidelines probably, and the guidelines need to be updated to reflect the fact that the color can be a little darker than they initially said. And that's fine. The guidelines are always a moving target. They're always a work in progress. They're a snapshot of something at a point in time. It doesn't mean they're defective or people did a bad job. It's the nature of how beers change. I mean, I've had 805 a while back. I don't remember it tasting like this, when it was first introduced. I think it was a little bit different maybe a few years ago. That may just be my personal recollection. But probably my first inclination, if this came to me at the judging table and I was doing blonde ale, I'd be like, this is not a blonde ale. And then I'd whip out the guidelines and say, wait a second, I just didn't understand what a blonde ale was.
So did he answer your question better than I did, or did he just kind of say what I
No, none of you answered the question, but that's fine. Well, actually, Brian, you sort of did. And the question was basically, if this crossed your table, would you think it fit the style or not? So I think Shar sort of did.
Initially, I probably would say no.
Yeah.
And then I look at the guidelines again, like maybe I'm having, because I don't judge blonde ale a lot. I don't think I have in the last 10 years. And you know what? Just because I have a certain rank doesn't mean I know everything. And it doesn't mean that I've memorized every edition of the style guidelines.
That is not what you told me before we started this show.
Well, so. I of course, I want you to think, JP, that I know everything.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, but it's not everyone can possibly know everything. And kind of my first, and that's just how I judge. My first inclination is if something seems off, I will take a look, and not like the kind of off where I'm judging stouts and I get something that looks like a light lager. Yeah. If something, the kind of off where this doesn't seem quite like it fits, then I'm going to whip out the guidelines and I'm going to check. And I'm willing to be to be wrong in my initial impression,
Mhm.
and then go back and look at the actual guidelines that govern the competition and say, wait a second, okay, I didn't know this about this style because I haven't judged it in a decade. So now I learned something.
Yeah. What a lawyer.
Well, and I wanted to point something out real quick because you mentioned it as being the lead-off example of the style. Well, the commercial examples are listed alphabetically by brewery in the guidelines.
I did not know that. See, I learned something just now.
Yeah, no, every time and it has been since 2015. They used to be ordered differently. Just out of fairness to the breweries, every one of the examples that is in there is a commercial example of the style, but it starts with F, Firestone-Walker, then it goes to K, Kona, and then, Kona was the first one in the last set of guidelines because there was nothing before K, but it goes on to Real Ale, Russian River, Victory, and Widmer. So it's just alphabetical.
Widmer's even around anymore.
I thought the lead example was the one that was supposed to be the most in line with the style, and I've been wrong all these years. Wow.
You're welcome.
I need to have a drink.
Yeah. Widmer isn't even around anymore. Why don't they just update that and take them out?
Good point.
Thanks, man.
I know some people.
I don't know. I thought, weren't they? I don't know. Didn't they?
Well, I thought Pyramid was gone, but I guess someone's
Pyramid's
still
gone.
Making Pyramid.
Really?
They are. Okay.
I wonder something about the brand. I don't know. Anyway,
clearly somebody bought the brand.
good beer. Not what I would consider a blonde ale, but I think, like Cooper was saying, that's probably the reason why they took blonde ale off the label. I don't know. But I think it is a little more toasty, a little more honey malt than what I would consider a blonde ale, but great beer nonetheless. And, sometimes I think this is one of those styles that can push the boundaries a little bit and get away with it because it's so crisp and clean and just stripped down.
We shouldn't write off Widmer either. They are still around, although I know they closed their tap house in Portland, their like kind of flagship.
That's probably what it is.
They were acquired by Anheuser-Busch, who also bought its parent company, Craft Brew Alliance, in 2019.
There you go.
So it's,
there you go.
Widmer it's still out there. You can get it. They brew a lot of it, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably that's it too. All right, hang on, everybody. We'll be right back. It's Dr. Homebrew.
Now, back to the examination.
All right, thanks for sticking around, everybody. We're about to wrap things up here. Thank you very much to Andy for sending in a pale ale that I didn't have to choke down.
Ouch. It was on its last legs, but it was not too bad.
No, I'm I'm harassing him for not sending mini. That's okay.
It would have been better if I drank it with him at HomebrewCon, but alas, that wasn't to happen because he had to split, and I rescued it and I brought it to you, Brian. You're welcome. Again.
And thank you. I appreciate getting that indirectly. That was really nice of you.
But it was nice to talk to Andy, and I got to hang out with him at HomebrewCon. We cruised around club night while he was still there, and caused some trouble with the Cleveland people. And,
fight them, dude! Fight the Cleveland people.
Yeah.
There's
a couple of good clubs out there, but
cool, man.
It was fun.
Great. And thanks to the close personal friend of the show, Matt Brynelson, for hand delivering this 805 to the grocery store for Cooper to buy. But
well, it's pretty fresh, and that speaks to me when you find a beer where like the oldest example you can find is only a month or so old. It means to me that beer is moving and people enjoy it and appreciate it. And kudos to Matt for brewing a quality product, coming up with a recipe that's not fizzy yellow beer in the least. It's bold, but it's approachable. And I like that.
That's right.
Whenever I text Matt, I get a new phone. Who dis? So I don't know.
Stop sending pictures of your wiener, and maybe you'll.
Is that the problem?
That's the problem. Yeah. He's changed a lot. So yeah.
So and if anyone wants to send us a beer, be it a fizzy yellow beer or a mead or a cider or kombucha, email me, Brian@thebrewingnetwork.com. Again, I'll repeat, I'm not a patent lawyer, nor do I play one on TV. But send us your beer, cider, mead, kombucha, wine, what have you. We'll drink just about anything that's a fermented beverage that isn't poisonous. And thank you for sending the beers that you have. And we have some more beers coming next month, and
That's
maybe
right.
some more commercial calibrations. Put your votes in the chat and on the comments under the, you can
Thing
comment.
stuff. Email
The thingy.
Brian at thebrewingnetwork.com for anything, because no one's going to ever read those.
Interwebs.
Yeah, please send your Indian patent spam to me.
Make a TikTok
That's right.
video requesting that we do a certain commercial style, and we'll try to do it if we find that TikTok video.
Yeah, for sure. It's hard to find the certain commercial styles, and I think we have to, we started the whole SEGI to try to find nationally distributed or easily found style, so everybody can be joining. If you're in Ohio or Florida or Jersey or Oregon, you could join in and do this. But I think it's becoming harder to know. I mean, first of all, I don't know what beers are found everywhere, but as everything sort of condenses and collapses in on itself, it's becoming harder and harder.
I mean, there's certain craft breweries, mega craft breweries that still do that. Sierra Nevada has East Coast and West Coast. Right, Russian River, right? It's becoming. You have to brew locally. You have to, drinking beer locally, finding a good craft beer brewery that is making a really good version of a style locally is the best way to taste it. And there's going to be some variation and allow for that. But you can read through the guidelines and say, oh, okay, this is an interesting version of this style, and it meets it, and the balance is leaning this way, as the 805 leaned a certain way. And we enjoy it here on the West Coast. If it traveled to the East Coast, would it taste the same? They don't have a brewery out there,
no,
that I know of yet, but maybe they'll work on that. I don't know. Who knows?
All right, we're going to get out of here, everybody. Thank you very much for tuning in, and of course, until next time, we'll see you later.